Turned her passion into purpose, work begun. Co-author of a movement, not-for-profits game, teaching kids that self-belief can ease the pain. Every child deserves to face their fears with measured thinking, not just tears. She's planting seeds of...
She's live.
Hello, I'm alive, and she's live.
Yeah, you're live. Yeah, and alive.
And alive, yeah. I'm both.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm coping. Got some challenges, but we're coping. We're getting through them, and it's interesting that when you face challenges, it puts a lot of things into perspective, and I think sometimes we need that kick up the bum to do that. You know, what's important in life and who's important in life, and you know, making those decisions. And that's partly what we're talking about today. It's all about boundaries, and Annie is part of my boundary, is inside the boundary. We have a lot to cover, but I really hope we have an interactive session, because I can teach, I can educate, I can help, but it's always best when it's an interactive session. I'm sure you agree.
That means I have to share the link for them to join.
Oh, well, that's okay. I've started, so that's fine.
Maybe I'll be talking to LinkedIn again. Thank goodness.
There you are. You see, hope you do. Hello, Cyrus.
Yeah, welcome. There's
Hello,
many more
Leanne.
people here, by the way.
Here we go. Well, there'll be lots of people.
But you need to comment and say hello, otherwise I don't know it's you that's here. How you doing, Linda?
Hi, Linda.
Welcome. So my friend,
welcome everyone. Yes, absolutely.
Say hello. So tell us where you're joining from. Say something.
Yeah, interact with us, please do. Yeah, please do. Absolutely. Good morning. The most important thing about these sessions really is if you go away with one little nugget, you will have said to yourself, that was an hour of my life or an hour and a half of my life that has really made a difference. And that is all my intention ever is. It's to help you with your kids, help you with your family, help you with your work. Because the thing about what we're talking about today, which is all about boundaries, is really all about relationships and communication. And I think it's really important, and Annie and I talk about this an awful lot. You let people in and they let you down, and then you push them away, and then they come worming their way back, and you forget what happened, and then they do it again, and you think, why did I fall for it? You know, because we've got a kind heart by nature. We're just by nature nice people generally, and we don't have that, if you like, reason to distrust people. But what we have to do is learn. So if somebody hurts you once and they hurt you again, the chances are they're going to keep on hurting you. And at that point, you have to make a decision. Am I going to live my life with that person hurting me all the time? Or am I going to either cut them out of my life, or am I going to come to a situation where you have to sit on the table and mediate and discuss and communicate? Or the alternative is that you try and set some boundaries which say, you can't have all of me, but you can have maybe 10% or 20% or whatever the number is. And it's really, really important that you, when making that boundary, when making that decision, what you're doing is, in a way, it's self-preservation. You're protecting yourself from being hurt. You're protecting yourself from, if you like, risking that person worming their way back in again, because you put the boundary mark in. And I think that's a bit like when we have a puppy dog and you've got carpet in the lounge. You put a gate on the door to the lounge where they can't come in and have an accident on your carpet. Whereas if they have an accident on a stone floor, you can clear it up. That's a boundary. Now, if you imagine your life like that, do you let that person in with the risk of them doing that on your carpet or not? It's a very strange analogy, but it's an actual picture that you can put in your mind that's very clear. And there's other ones that I use. For example, a bird. You're walking down the street and a bird poos in your eye. There's a lot of poo talk today, but there's a bird poos in your eye. And some go, oh, it's luck, a bit of luck. You go, luck? As you're trying to wipe the mascara and everything off your eye. No, it's supposed to be luck. Well, the second time it happens, or the third time it happens, or the fourth time it happens, you don't get all this luck. What happens is you're walking in what was Trafalgar Square, where there's thousands of pigeons and thousands of pigeons crapping. So the answer is that it's not luck. That is not luck. The boundary is you don't walk in Trafalgar Square where there are thousands of pigeons. They're not there anymore. They got moved, and I believe a lot of them over at Tower Bridge now, but they were actually moved, and they put eagles in to do that. And an eagle was basically a boundary. The eagle makes a lot of noise and lets the pigeons know that, just like a lion would in jungle, he roars, everyone goes, oh yeah, we don't really want to fall out with him. We'll let him have the jungle. We'll go and move along a bit. We'll leave that bit for him. The eagle told the pigeons that if you keep, making those squawking noises, I'll come and find you and I'll eat you. And the pigeons all went, we don't really want that. So all these eagles that were placed, and many of them were just statues and just noises, but there were a few real ones that were released, specifically with the purpose of putting a boundary in that Trafalgar Square and the people that are wanting to come and look at the palace and walk down the Mall and everything else do not want to be pooed all over, Leicester Square, you're all queuing up to go to the cinema, and all of a sudden there's birds flying above your head. It's not fun. And people said, please do not feed the birds. So what do people do? They feed the birds. When you feed a bird, what happens? The bird needs to get rid of the defecate, we'll use that word. And so consequently, what you're doing is by feeding the bird, you're giving the bird a need to get rid of it. So consequently, the boundary was we need to move the birds away from people. And that's what they've done. They've moved it over to Tower Bridge. A lot of them are over there happily swimming around the water of the Thames and all that area, and they've gone away. And that was largely done by somebody who was much smarter than me, who said an eagle will deal with that problem because it's the king bird. So what I want you all to do is to be the king of your own castle, or the queen of your castle. So if you imagine yourself as Trafalgar Square and you don't want the pigeons, what do we need to do? We need to put the eagle in place, right? To protect your space, your area. And it doesn't mean that you want to protect your whole area. It might mean that you want to protect 75% or 90% or whatever, depending on the circumstances. And there are so many books, and one of my favorites is workbooks, actually. I used to give these out to people, the workbooks. And setting boundaries workbooks are all about teaching from a very early book, which is like consistency. If you're going to set a boundary, then hold to the line. If you say 9 o'clock's the time you have to be in by, 9 o'clock's the time, not 10 past, not quarter past, not half past, unless you phone and say there's been an accident and or the train's stopped or broken down or whatever. If you phone home with a reason that the parents will check on, trust me, then that's the way they've just pushed the boundary a little bit, but they've told you a reason. If every time you say 9 o'clock it's 9:30, then the boundary is just being ignored. and they're just pinching that extra half an hour. If when you send a child to bed and say, right, come on, you're going to be up for school tomorrow morning, and when you go into the room, you notice a little blue light in the bed. You know, what is the little blue light in the bed? Well, the light is the phone. And they think that you're not clever enough to work out that there is something underneath the bed. Now, I used to have a torch that I used to read at night. I was a crazy reader. I used to read non-stop every day, every night, books and books and books. They were my escape place. It's what I used to love to escape to. But now the kids are escaping to a phone. And so if you say no phones upstairs and the phone's in the bed, then they've gone against that boundary in a big way. That's a big conversation. And I always have this, and I didn't even know that I had it until actually a friend of mine, Harold Walter Asman, pointed it out, that he thought I was not necessarily the word genius, but smart. He said, how did you come up with the big fish, little fish? And I said, well, when you have a child with autism, they don't always get the right reaction to a problem. So they may react big fish reaction, but to a little fish problem, whereas they might react in a very small way to a really big problem. Like somebody's died and they go, oh, well, that's sad. You go, but they're not here anymore. They're gone. It's really sad. And they're like, yeah, I get it. And you're like, but do you get it? Do you really understand? So sometimes the reactions aren't what you expect. And boundaries can be very complicated when you have children with ADD, ADHD, autism. And having that analogy is really, really good for them to understand about their reactions and why things are important to you. So if you say, the reason I don't want you to have the phone in bed is because you won't get any sleep and you'll be looking at things till 1 o'clock in the morning because you just get into a loop of searching and looking and watching and whatever. And he'd say, if it was Ben, it would be, I'm watching Big Bang Theory. It's not bad. It's good. It's fun. Nothing wrong with it. And I'm like, no, I know, but you don't do it anymore. Give me the phone, give me the iPad or whatever. So it's all about them understanding why. You will be tired in the morning. You will be grumpy in the morning. What are the consequences of that? You're going to go to school. You're going to be grumpy. Your teachers are going to have to deal with you tired, yawning, not paying attention. There are consequences to you breaking that rule. I don't like rules. No, I know you do like rules, but you don't like the rules that you don't like. Okay, so with autistic children especially, they love this. They're like a rigid system. They understand where they're going. They know what they're doing. They like that kind of comfortable position of where they're going, what they're doing, at what time they're doing it. It's routine. But you set a rule they don't like, they will dig their claws in and won't let go. And you really have to reason with them. And so when I've spoken to parents who are dealing specifically with children with like SEND or special educational needs or disabilities, you are talking about remembering that they think differently. So my big fish, little fish analogy was me saying to him, I'm reacting in a big way to what you consider a very small problem. But I can tell you tomorrow when you're tired, I'm going to turn around and see, I told you so. But let's see how you are at the end of the day. And when they walk in, absolutely like, oh, you know, absolutely shattered. And you say, so what time are you staying up to tonight then? And they go, I'm going to have an early night tonight. I'm shattered. And you go, right, now do you understand? So you can reason. You can't always reason with some children. Some children you just have to fight with. And when I mean fight, I mean fight the rule. This is the rule. You have to stick to it. I know you don't like it. I don't like the arguments. I don't like the fights, but we have to do this. And the reason we have to do this is because it's for your benefit. And at this moment in time, we're working really hard with social media, working with children not going on social media. The stories we're hearing that are absolutely horrific about, games like Roblox being massively infiltrated by the paedophile rings and things. We can only protect children so much, but you can have rules like, who are you playing with? Oh, it's a friend of mine. Yeah, I know it's a friend of yours, but who is it? Someone from school. No, somebody I met online. Okay, great. What's their name? Why? Just because I'm asking. Fred. Okay, can I talk to Fred? No, you're my mum. You can't talk to Fred. No, I want to talk to Fred. And then you talk to Fred and you find out Fred's a 40-year-old man. What's he doing talking to a 9-year-old kid or whatever? And they disappear. And then they're very angry with you because they've lost their friend Fred, who used to help them win. And he would buy them gold coins, would you believe? When they needed extra coins in order to carry on with the game. This friend Fred must have had more money than Ben had, because Fred would buy him coins. And I had to explain that was part of the manipulation. And he was like, was he a really bad man? And I was like, yeah, I think so. Oh, I'm glad we don't talk to Fred anymore then. But then the next day you'll talk to Steve. And who's Steve? I don't know, met him online. Off we go again. So the point is, if you put some rules that are, if you're going to talk to somebody on Roblox and then can mum just have a quick chat to their parents, just so I know that you're talking to somebody who is age appropriate? Well, I could talk to their dad. Well, of course I could, because that is the bloody dad, right? No, we make the rule that we want to speak to either the mum or we want to speak to the child themselves. Hear the child's voice. Now, I know that I've been told by a couple of incredibly clever social media experts that there is now voice simulators and all sorts of things. I don't want to get involved in that because it's just over my head. But it's really, really important that those boundaries that you set, they understand why. They're protections. And when they understand why, like, why can't I have another bag of sweets? Because you've only got 32 teeth. And those 32 teeth have got to last you until you're probably 70 or 80. If you keep eating sweets, those teeth won't last you till then. If these are your second set of teeth, they will be gone, rotten, and you'll have to have fillings and God knows what else. So how about you understand why? Can I have McDonald's every night? No, you can't have McDonald's every night. You can have McDonald's as a treat every now and again. But the reason you can't have it every night is because it's not good for you. It's not good for your stomach. It's not good for your weight. It's not good for lots of reasons. Boundaries. And if you explain the reason for the boundary, 9 times out of 10, they accept it. So what I find, and what I found talking directly to children and talking to parents and then coming back together as like a family court where you're sitting in the middle of this like angst, and you just say, right, do you think your mum loves you, or your dad loves you, or mum and dad love you? And the answer is, of course I do. So do you think they're doing anything to hurt you? No. So why are you fighting them? Because I want, and it's like, do you know what? The more I want, don't get. How about you say, am I allowed to have a late night once a week on a Friday? Because it's not a school night the next day. Can I have an extra hour on that night? Can I go to bed that night? Can I have my phone that night for an extra hour? You can work these into a solution where both parties are comfortable with that. I think we have to be really mindful that children are little sods and they will lie to you. They will fiddle with passwords. They will have 8 or 9 different handles or sites or brands or names, whatever you want to call them. They'll call themselves anything if it means they can get logged onto a site they want to get logged onto. And what we have to do as parents is understand that if we aren't techie enough to follow that through, we have to have the trust from them that they're not doing it. So when we ask them, have you just got the one? Well, I forgot my password, so I set up another one. So you've got 2. Well, yeah, but then I forgot my password again, and now I've got 3. Okay, but 2 of them are inactive. Well, I kind of remember one of the part. Well, hang on a minute. How many have we got going here? Because if mum comes in and listens to you talking on one of them, and you're talking to 7-year-old Harry, and I'm comfortable and happy with that, and then I go out the room and you start talking to 40-year-old John, I won't be happy. So we need to have the discipline and the trust. And, these are things about controls that I really, I don't want to get into all the detail because it's too big a topic. But if you're seen as being mean, selfish, unloving, you're hurting them, you don't care about them, and you're losing connection, that means that when you've set the boundaries, they haven't understood why. When you explain the why, they usually understand the reason. They might not like it, and they might still try and nick an extra half an hour or argue that they're allowed to have their phone in their room because they need to charge it. Well, you can charge it downstairs. No, you can't, because I've got the cable upstairs. Give it to me and I'll take the cable downstairs. They will push their luck. Trust me, they will. But you don't want that feeling of guilt, and you don't want that feeling of rejection, and you don't want that feeling that you're the bully, because that is not what this is about. Setting boundaries is about protection for you as a parent, that you're doing a good job, and protection of your child so that they don't get into something that they can't get themselves out of. And let's be honest, it's a very different world to the world that we grew up in. Certainly, I think I'm called a baby boomer, which really upset me when I found that out. I've moved into a different box, and it's so many 55 to 60, and then you go into the 60, and I'm 61. I'm now in the old girls box, so not quite the box literally, but you know what I mean. I don't like that boundary, but it's what it is. I have to just accept it. I don't like the boundary that Charles makes me eat. I don't want to eat at the moment. It makes me ill, but he makes me eat. I don't like that boundary, but I understand that I have to eat. I've got lots of people checking up on me. How am I? Am I all right? Am I coping? Is this okay? Blah, blah, blah. It's out of love. Those people that care for me are setting a boundary of, I love you, I care for you, we want to make sure you're all right and you're going to be around. I just see it as another person wanting to know whether or not I'm still puking up all the bloody time. And Charles said, it must be terrible to be so loved. And then I go, okay. You're preaching to the converted. I get it. So I am guilty of this whole boundary thing, the same as a child would be, the same as everyone in the room will be. But what I want to do is just make us understand that when you set a boundary and you give really good reason, it makes it so much easier to tolerate, and it makes it so much more, you'll find a far more willing participant within that boundary than if you just go, your curfew is 9 o'clock, no discussion. If you mess it up, it'll be 8 o'clock. You know, that sort of sounds very draconian and very, that's how it is. No wriggle room, no nothing. That's it. Bang, bosh, whatever. That child will either be so fearful of being late, or will be like, up yours, I'll be coming in at 10 and let's see what you can do about it, you know? And that's what kids do. Let's just see how far I can push him before he really, you know, goes for it, you know? There's another expression, we call it pressing buttons. Kids know which buttons to press on us adults. They know exactly where the buttons are, and they know when we're going to fly off the handle, and they know exactly what to do to make it happen. And what we have to do is be the control center of those buttons and go, no, I'm in my calm self, and I'm not going to react that way because you're looking for the reaction. You're not going to get it. I'm going to be calm. I'm going to be like Brenda Lee's would tell you, to breathe, and you're going to cope. And then you're going to go, we'll talk about this in the morning, go to bed. And then they go to bed going, oh no, I'm going to be in for it in the morning. Uh-oh. That calmness freaks them out, right? I'm sure many of you have been there, and I'd love to hear how that went for you. I've always found that the calmer I am, the more freaked out people get. Like, Charles will come home and go, I've got some really bad news. The rental house we've got's got a leak. All right. Well, there's also another problem, which is okay. And there's this other problem. Okay. And it's like, are you all right? Have you had an extra pill? You know, you're a bit chilled. And I'm like, I've just given up worrying about it, right? Just given up. I'm not stressing about something I can do nothing about. We've got to put it right, move on. But that's an example of, I'm not giving the reaction that he would expect. So I think I've covered most things in terms of setting the boundaries, keeping the consistency. Don't deal with that resentment and feeling like you're the worst person on the planet, because you're not. Let them grow within, give them the opportunity to grow, but don't let them take advantage, because if you let them do it once, they'll push the boundary all the time. And as they get older, that becomes harder and harder to manage. Like, if you let a kid hit you and they're 8 years old, and you let them hit you at 10 years old, and you let them hit you at 12 years old, when they're 16 or 17, they could knock you across the room. So the answer is, you stop it when they're little, and you explain why it's not acceptable. And if they do it in school, what's going to happen? They're going to get in trouble with the teacher and the headmaster, blah, 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 blah. And then they're like, so hitting's not allowed anywhere unless you want to go in the boxing ring or go and learn to fight properly. But if you don't deal with it, you're dealing with an angry 16-year-old in your face. Very scary. And I have dealt with parents who are 5'2" and they've got 6'2" sons glaring down at them, shouting at them. And they're like, what am I supposed to do? Bite his kneecaps? And I'm like, well, no, that won't work either. But, you know, we work through it. So that's that one covered very, very quickly, because I know I've been guessing for a while. But I did want to bring up, because it's so important to me, that I'm always inclusive. And that is children that have autism, ADD and ADHD. Those boundaries aren't just behavioural. It's about regulation for them. it gives them a level of safety. It makes things very predictable, and it allows them to function. And sometimes without the boundaries, they can become quite lost. When Ben was very little, and not knowing this, that was right or wrong, but he would get confused as to what he was doing. And I used to say to him, well, look, this is the morning, this is late morning, then this is lunch, the elbow's lunch, then we go into the afternoon, and then you come home at the shoulder. So he could look at his arm and know what point of the day it was, and he knew everything was okay. And when I went to one of my courses and I told them I did that, they were like, oh, that's a clever idea. Hadn't done that before. Haven't used that. And I was like, they said, what made you come up with that? And I was like, I don't know. It's a spur of the moment thing, you know, they're like little fish, big fish. It's just how I dealt with Ben. I was dealing with an unknown. I had never dealt with autism and ADD and ADHD with anybody before. My husband's mildly autistic. He's also incredibly sarcastic, but they're just factors of him, you know? That was just Charles. But with a child, it was very, very different. So their nervous system and needs external structure. It really, really helps regulate them. It sort of stops them having to struggle with impulse control, emotional regulation, transitioning between tasks, predicting consequences. I've written down, Ben would predict. He's a great predictor. If that boy keeps doing that, I think he'll have to leave the school. Oh, do you? Yes, there should be a rule about that. Okay, well, look, you're 8, and I don't think you're in a position to make the rules, and I don't think you should be telling the teacher what you think should happen, because it's not your job. Yeah? But for him, he's setting his own boundaries now. He's like, this is how I see it. That's what should happen. You know, and with politics and countries, and rigid, extremely rigid in his thinking. And it's really hard for me to have to say, you have to be a bit more flexible in your thinking. You can't just go, I am this or you are that. Be a little bit more willing to just be a bit more flexible. And he's like, I don't do flexible. I'm like, can we try? Right? Let's just aim to be a little bit more flexible, because you might meet somebody who is very much on the left wing and you're very much on the right wing, or whatever wing you're on. And the problem is that there's always the risk. There is always the risk that people will misinterpret what you said. And that is something that I've really had to work hard on when he was getting older, because I had a doctor. He said to me, he was sat on the end of my bed. So he had a bedside manner in that he sat on the bed. But he said to me, I don't think you'll be going home. And I said, well, that's okay. I'll go home tomorrow. And he's like, no, I don't think you understand. I don't think you're going home. And I was like, it's okay. I'll go home another day. It's fine. And then somebody flatlined across the ward, and he had to go and deal with them. And I was left there thinking, did I miss something? Have I misinterpreted what he said? And then very kindly, one of the assistants who was following him around, one of the junior doctors, just winked at me and she said, I'll be back. And she came back, and she came back with her professor, and they sat on the bed and they talked about, I got 5 blood clots in my right lung, and it was very serious, but they were treating it, and and if it looked like it was a problem, he would move me to Papworth, which is the huge heart hospital in Cambridge, which is only like a 20-minute blue light job. He said, we'll get you there and we'll deal with it. So he said, but I will be speaking to the other consultant because that was not the right way to handle it. And I said, but I didn't really get it. I didn't twig. He meant I could be the next one to flatline. So bedside manner, you know, that he was very rigid in his words. He was very rigid in his speaking and the way that he was. When Ben was talking about becoming a doctor, he said, I don't want to be one of those that sits on the end of the bed. Because you know me, Mum, I'll just say it, won't I? You got 3 weeks to live. You know, that'd be me. Because that's what it says on the bit of paper. That's what I'll tell him. He said, I want to be a doctor that works with research in a laboratory that I can't upset the slides and say the wrong thing. Right? And I'm making light of it because what else can you do? So that guy who was sitting on the end of my bed was clearly a genius, very, very smart man. But he was also very rigid in the way that he spoke. He was obviously on the spectrum. And what he didn't realize is that that had a massive effect on me. I didn't want to go to hospital anymore because I figured they were trying to kill me. And then I had to have it explained to me that they weren't trying to kill me. They're trying to keep me alive. That's me setting a boundary. I'm not going to hospital. Nope, not happening. And then like 3 weeks later, I'm back in hospital again. But the point I'm making, and the reason I'm making the point, is I'm an adult and I'm going, nope, like toys at the pram. I'm not going back to hospital, not me. Nope, not happening. So we're all guilty of doing that. And I think it's really important that we all understand that we're only kids that just haven't grown up, right? And when we get a bit, I'm not doing this or I'm not doing that, or I'm going to block that person and report them and do this and do that, you're just working to your boundary. That person overstepped the mark, deal with it. That's right. It's the right way to do it. Otherwise, someone else will be dealing with that problem. So every person in this room and every person watching this, wherever you watch it from, understand that boundaries are good things. All right? Annie, come in and talk to me about this boundary. What do you make of it all?
Boundaries. Rules, Paulette. They're not really, are they? As you said. Yeah. Anyway, before we talk about now boundaries, let's welcome our friends.
Please.
Yeah, so welcome, Patricia. I don't think I've seen you this side of the new year, so happy new year to you. You look amazing, Paulette. I told you that diet is working for you.
Yes, the have your gallbladder out diet works wonders.
So welcome, Linda. Welcome you earlier, right? And I think the topic about cell phones is probably the biggest issue of contribution in families these days, right? With the kids that we have.
Massive.
It's a problem. I think it does speak to boundaries as a thing, right? So Linda talking to Patricia, good morning. Notice miss you, Graham. So I will have to take that word because there are many that I miss. Okay, superb. What's miss you, Graham? I love to know, right? Of course we love to know. Yeah. Is that Patricia's service? It sounds like it. How you doing, Linda? Great to see you. Welcome. So Kardashian is here as well. Joseph. Okay. Again, I don't think I've seen you this time of the year, so welcome. To Cyrus as well. Who's this one? I don't know who this. My sister Annie. How you doing?
Oh.
Great to see you. I say, Kardashian says, give and take is an agreement. See, again, that's not to say. Then so there's mobile phones. In other words, which boundaries are more important?
Pick your fights.
Others. I mean, say like given to, say as a parent, I know what's right. Do as you're told. Yeah. Yeah. My son, this is probably issue 3 need to pick on, right? You know, age matters, right? So when you're 8, you know, that's something. But as kids get older, I think that we get confused on two fronts. Front number one, we get confused on I'm their friend, I'm your friend. I don't want to be screaming at you. I don't want to restrict you, you know? But you know, I'm my son and I, you know, we're friends. When he's 17, we're friends, but you know, he knows I'm always in dad mode. You know, and I think the age thing creates a need to be flexible. As kids get older, now you can't have the same rules when they're 10 as when they're 17. Like, that's just ridiculous. Like, you're setting yourself up for a problem. And I think I think we have to give them more elastic. And I don't want to say right, but say more elastic, you know, to be more themselves and to have more self-determination. You know, but then as Kajashiv happily says, or rightly says, there's consequences with that. You know, who are they hanging around with? Because you know, I remember when we left London in 2018. My oldest son then, he had all sorts of problems, you know, with gangs and you know those gangs in London and trying to get him to do terrible things, and people coming to to essentially find him. Even though we live in the countryside, yeah, that was I'm sure that's one of my wife's motivations to move. You know, I thought the question is how do you control, how do you create boundaries for those sort of situations where the problem is coming to us. It's not necessarily our kids going out to find problems. It's the problems are coming to your doorstep.
I had one, Eddie. I had a lady come to me, maybe mid-40s, and she said her parents would never have let her bring her boyfriend home. Even when she was engaged, they weren't allowed to sleep together, right? In their mum and dad's house. Mum and dad's rule was what you do outside the house is what you do, but you don't do it in the house. So she said to her mum, so you'd rather we were doing it in the car than doing it in your house? And the mum gave her a bit of a slap round the chops and said that was disgusting and rude and how dare she. And she was being, and she'd never forgotten it. It was like one of those moments in life that you go, oh. I said, how old were you? She said, I was 18. I said, right. And you were engaged at 18? She said, yeah, but years ago, people got engaged and married much younger. So I said, okay, right. So I said, what's the problem? She said, well, I've now got an 18-year-old daughter and she's had a boyfriend for a couple of years. And she's saying she doesn't understand why I won't let them stay in the same house. And I said, and I heard my mother's words, I don't care what you do outside the house, but you're not doing it under my roof. And she said it was as if she was looking in the mirror at her mum. It hasn't changed. You still want respect. You still want that same respect your parents had. And you're saying, look, I don't agree that this is a permission that I can give. When you're married, it's different. You've committed, you're in that relationship, it's different. But as a boyfriend, no, not happening. And so she was stroppy as hell. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, she broke up with this boyfriend. And then about 3 or 4 months later, she met another boyfriend. And she said to her mum, is it okay if Santos stays over? And she said, yeah, in the spare room, no problem. I'll make it up. No, you can stay in my room. No. And she said, no, it's not happening. And she said, well, he'll just sneak into my room during the night then. So her mum then said, fine, I'll put a camera on the stairs and I'll know. And then it started getting pettier and pettier. And in the end, the dad said, it's all right, we'll just put flour on the floor. You know, we just watch like Santa footsteps. You know, it was like getting really, really petty. And I just said, the answer is no. And that's it. It's either no, accept it, or no, the boyfriend doesn't get to stay at all. And she was like,
But Paulette, no, come back a bit. I think, is there a need to at least explain the rule? I think that one, the boyfriend girlfriend thing, so like, I've got that rule. I've always had that rule, right? So I told my kid, no, not that any of them kept to it. To be fair, you know, done with bringing people to my house, right? That was until one day, and I said, no, I think in our house in Coulson, right? Like, we moved in, and my kids were 15, 16, right? So they were young-ish, and so I had to be protected from, right now. And I just didn't like people in I don't want people in my house because we had a big house, a huge house, to be fair, and we gave them their own part of the house. Literally, they had 2 staircases. They had their own living room, their own bedrooms, their own bathrooms, their own living area. We had our own the other side. So one day, I'm sitting there, I can hear noises upstairs. There's no one in, as far as I'm concerned. There's no one in, right? So you have to go and look, right? You hear footsteps in your house. Of course, you have to go and look. And I found this big black man, bigger than me. Well, yeah, I see it, bigger than me. I was like, what are you doing here? So I said, like, we had a fight-ish. I don't fight anyone. So I just love, I love stuff outdoors and all sorts, right? No, literally, so, of course, he ran out of the house. And yes, he ended up in prison for doing bad things to people, basically, doing girls, right? And was I right? Yes. Did he say him ending up in prison vindicated my point? It didn't stop my daughter getting pregnant. Not long after, to be fair. So so that particular rule, what are we thinking? I don't know. I'm saying we need to explain to the kids because most just don't get it.
Just a quick one on that, Ellie. Just a quick one. And this is again back to Ben being partly the autism, but also saying exactly what's on his mind, right? So we're at a dinner party and we ran one of our best friends that was not anymore. They were our best friends. And they live around the corner and we were at dinner with them. And Christina had got her new boyfriend with her. The new boyfriend's there. And Ben said, "You're not the same one that was here last week."
I love Ben.
Right? So he was about 8 or 9. So she said, so I thought, okay, let it go. I said, no, this is a new boyfriend. It's fine. It's a new boyfriend. But she has a lot, doesn't she? I've been counting. I think we're at 10. And I just went, and the table moved, and my hand was on his leg, and he jumped in the air as I grabbed his leg. Charles was like, "What the heck?" The plate went in the air, and we're all sitting there going, "What?" It could have just been brushed under the carpet, but no, not us, not our family. There was a big old to-do. We'd caused embarrassment, blah blah blah. Do you know what? Yeah, probably we did, and yeah, is the lessons to be learned. Did he say anything that wasn't true? No. He told the truth. And if the parents are happy to have that many boyfriends stay over, right? Because she's significantly older. 16, 17 years old she was. And there were literally different ones every week kind of thing. And we were like, okay, this is really weird and working out not in our favour. I mean, I used to say, who am I writing on the Christmas card? Because I could never remember. who was the current one. So it was as bad as that. But Ben never learned that to think those things, but you don't have to say them. And that's what we had to teach him about when it's okay. Talk to us about it when we get home. If you got a question, talk to us about it when we get home. Absolutely talk to us. We definitely want you to do that, but you don't have to do it there. Okay? And he was like, okay. And then he said, is the other one, like her brother, gay? And I was like, pardon? And he's now, this wasn't at the table, this was at home. He said, because he's never had a girlfriend, I wondered if he might be gay. And I said, was you going to say that? He said, well, I would have done if you hadn't have grabbed my leg like that. And I said, it was a good job Lincoln did, wasn't it? But you see, he's only saying what he sees. He's only saying the facts. And we don't always like the facts. And we sometimes don't like the facts being pointed out. And if you're a parent and you've got an 8-year-old child telling you that you're not parenting very well, it's a boundary, right? That's he overstepped the mark. Now, did I need to grab his leg? Probably not. Charles said I stuck a fork in it. I don't think I stuck a fork in his leg. I think I just grabbed his leg. But they swear I stuck. The story's been changed over the years, but Charles always says I stuck a fork in his leg. Maybe I did. I don't remember. I thought I just grabbed it, but I know that everything went flying, and as a result of it, it was quite a to-do. But the point is, their boundaries. If somebody else is comfortable with different boyfriends stopping over and not making an issue of it, and it's fine, what does that say to their daughter about relationships? It says they last 2-3 weeks, a month, 2 months, 3 months, and they're over. And then off you go again. It doesn't teach them about longevity. It doesn't teach them about proper relationships and what relationships mean and how you form them and how you create longevity. Otherwise, basically, you're just one up from a one-night stand. You're just a 3-week stand or a month stand or whatever it is, and you certainly don't want that normally under your own ceiling. But
some would argue with you and say if you had let them stay under your roof, it might last longer. I'm just giving you a devil's advocate view on one of the complexities. Saying, there's no right and wrong rules, and I think everyone's got their red lines, and everyone.
Well, she did let them stay, and they never did last. It just seems to me that it was just like instead of having to save up to hire a travel lodge, you just went round there.
Look, I think I think there is something about how we were parented. And I think they said what we learned as kids, how our parents went on. It does affect how we think and how we see things and how the boundaries we set.
Definitely.
I suppose I'll say from experience, and I've learned. I've got 3 kids. They're all so different. They're very, very different. Especially now that they're older. But so I said, my youngest is a different generation completely. I said, the other 2 are in their 30s, like similar in age. Whereas, Kobe's different. Like you said, us being Gen, God knows what, baby boomers. That's you. I'm not. I'm still Gen X. I think something like that, right?
Rub it in, my friend. Rub it in.
I'm just saying, right? Millennials are a whole different breed. Even born in 2009, is it millennial or is it the one before that?
Gen
I think,
Z.
Right. As opposed to Gen Zs, right? And they're all different. And yes, of course, mentally I have the same red lines, but I think modern kids don't tend to. They cross different boundaries. To my point. For us, I have no interest in bringing girls home. not he's never, it doesn't, when I say walking down the road, I'm like, you taking care of what? No, it's like, shut up, go away, right? And he will tell me, things that are not important as far as he's concerned. No, that's not that's not deep. No, it's not that deep. It's his favorite words. I say, no, Dad, don't bring your old baggage with you. I think there's something there. I think that there is something there that we can learn. We have to adapt.
For sure. And I think with the phones, I mean, I have friends who've got children who are 8 years old and they're on their second phone. 8 years old, second phone. They've had iPads since they were like 3 or 2. And they could work their mum's phones at 2 years old, and you watch that and you were going, oh, I don't think that's right. But then I got into trouble when COVID happened because I was being asked for any old phones I had, and we had drawfuls of the damn things because I never got rid of them. And we were handing them out left, right, and centre to people so their children could do lessons online. So anyone that we could help, we helped. So we gave them the phones. I even went out and bought, because it's me, £10 cards to start them off with. SIMs, to start them off with, because I thought that was the kindest way to help these families. But then afterwards, I'm like, 7, 8-year-olds got phones. We're the ones that said we don't want 7 or 8-year-olds to have phones. But when it was COVID, we said we need as many of these gadgets as we can. 3 children, 3 different age groups, 3 different classrooms, 3 different phones.
3 phones, 3 laptops.
That was what we had to do. So how do you then take it off them?
Yeah.
Right?
No, but isn't it funny how we've gone through the full cycle, basically, from what you just said, right? We've done that. Phones are bad for you. No, you can't have phones when you're young. And then we're like, you need phones. Even the school said that all your homework and all your work's on the phone, all your work's online. And then today, I don't mean today, literally, I'm saying in the last few weeks, the government turns around to schools and says, right, we don't want any kids having phones at school at all. We must take the phone off them when they come to school. You can have it at the end of the day, but we don't want them holding the phone or even having the phone in the bag. And again, maybe I've seen the other side, which is that schools really set homeworks these days because the kids can't have the phone. They don't want to encourage phone use at home, which is where are we meant to stand as parents?
I am still old school. I write notes and I print notes. Yes. I come prepared for every single one of these rooms that we have. I come fully prepared. I've done my research. I've looked at all different angles. But the phone one is really, really interesting. We're saying we don't want children to have social media until they're 16 because they're not mentally capable of understanding. I have a friend, associate, who is a headmaster. It's not gone public, it's stayed out the papers, but there was a pornography video made of his head on one of the secretaries, and it was made by putting their faces onto the bodies.
Easily
done by a 13-year-old boy and then sent round the school. Now, even though everybody knew it wasn't true, number one, the 2 people concerned, both the adults, are mortified, right? Mortified. The child that did it thought it was the funniest prank ever because it's just a prank. No one got hurt because it's not real. No one's going to believe it, right? But the end result is the kid's been expelled, and there's all kinds of connotations come from it, where because he's 13 legally, what he has done is illegal. It will go to court because they're taking it to court to make a point, because if it ever does leak or get out, then they want this whole thing, battened down. The Teachers Association, the union, not teachers, sorry, the trade union want to take it all the way, because they want to make a point of this can never and must never happen. But it's so easily done.
It is.
And
It really is.
there are videos of young girls who've just had their faces lifted up from social media on Facebook or whatever, and they're appearing in child pornography. And people are saying, well, how does it happen? It's impossible. And you're like, you said it's so easily done. And when I was talking to Charles about it, who has very strong opinions, I will tell you, he's like, are you serious? This is that easy? And I'm like, yeah. And the more AI becomes available, and the more the software becomes capable of doing these things, the more realistic it will become, and the more at risk everybody is. Not just teachers, not you, any, could be accused of having a relationship with a 10-year-old kid that you've never met, because there's a video of it, right? And this is how dangerous it gets. So back to boundaries. That kid that made that video is they're going all the way. They will go legal. He could end up in some sort of children's prison type institution, because his parents didn't teach him right from wrong. Now, right from wrong, or was it a prank? Is it stupid? Was it just a stupid prank? But then, hang on. We go back to the challenges. Do we teach our children that these challenges are dangerous? You put your head out of a window on a train going into a bridge, you could be beheaded.
Yeah.
But that is a challenge. People are standing on platforms that are like less than 6 inches, as high as you could imagine, just to take doing the plank up in the air on the edges of
take a selfie.
Multi-story car parks and taking selfies and going, now beat this one. So the next person has to go up the top of a digger or something. What I'm trying to explain is that we have to set the line somewhere. Now, my son would never create that video of a teacher. Would your son any?
No, but then as you're talking for that, and I remember Miss Perrin. Hopefully, she's old and gone by now. Right? I mean that as a teacher in my high school. Like, so my high school is 13 to 16 thereabouts, right? Now, she was in the magazine, and the kids had the magazine, right? The kids, we had the magazine, so it wasn't fake, it wasn't made up. She wasn't fired. Yes, we got told off for obviously banding this magazine around. You know what I'm saying? Rules are such a...
Listen, teachers, there's been teachers being accused of being, and nurses on OnlyFans. And when they've been told, what are you doing on OnlyFans? It's, well, I've got no choice. I've got to try and pay the rent or the mortgage. I can't do it on the wages. And then people tell me, you can't have teachers on OnlyFans, but then you're not paying them a wage that's big enough to stop them doing these things. But the bottom line, I know that I've instilled enough morals, ethics, and values in my child that he wouldn't do something like that. In fact, he'd be the one that puts his hand up and goes and reports it and gets in trouble for being a whistleblower. Because when they say, somebody brought it to our attention, is in the middle of an assembly, somebody brought it to our attention, and Ben went, that was me! And then at the end of the assembly, the head teacher said, Ben, when you're the whistleblower, normally you don't announce it, you know, because it might cause a bit of trouble. And he was like, no, they did wrong. They had to be told. And then, okay, fine, you deal with the consequences, you know. And Ben would come home with a black eye because somebody gave him a thump. And I go, well, you know, learn your lesson. If you want to be the goody two shoes that tells on people, you have to be aware that there are consequences. I'm really proud of you, but I want you to know that there's a risk. You took a risk,
Yeah.
okay? And that risk is you drop that child in trouble. Fine, but you didn't need to own up to it in front of the whole school. Learn a lesson, all
Honesty
right?
is a good thing.
Okay.
I think. Oh no, we all want our kids to be honest, but like you say, that there is a boundary there. So
Of
there's
course.
a line.
Yeah.
Now there's also no. I think there's a line that's maybe too far, right? Let me do some more work on school, and then
Please.
and then we have to go soon and say no. I know we have a conversation to have. I also want to go and get myself some potatoes, giant potatoes.
Yeah, this could definitely be another room as well, because I'd love to hear other people's views on what
Yeah.
they do in circumstances. 'Cause I think we're all different, and different countries, different, you know, just everything.
Yeah, for sure. Dude, Lisa, how are you? Thank you for being here. Of course, Natalie.
Lovely, Lisa.
Welcome to Dr. Roxana.
Hi. Hello.
Amazing to have all of you here. So you could be anywhere, but you're here with us, right? We'll take it. We'll take it. I'm scrolling down, right. So Patricia says boundaries seem to be more about what you tolerate rather than what people do to you. True. No, sadly, that's how it comes across to me. It's easy. I say sadly, and let me take it. I take it with the sad. I think boundaries are red lines. I think Paulette hit the nail on the head earlier, when she said it's about not living with resentment. It's about not looking at your kid and being resentful because they've done something that you just you just can't live with almost. So if that's the case, I think we benefit from being clear. That's what the boundary is, and explaining to our kids, here's what you can and can't do. If you do that, I will feel something. It's not. It won't be a good feel. Whereas if you don't do that, if you do something else, I could be happier. But then I say but as our kids get older, these things are really with jar us. Become less. I think they become less painful. But no, I don't believe in. Saying here's one of my big boundaries, Paulette. I told my kids my job is to look after you till you are 16, because in this country, in the UK, at 16, you can't go into care anymore. Under 16, social services can come take the kid off you, basically. Right? I just said, right, that's what I'm working for. Once you're 16, you go, go for you. Start learning how to live like an adult, because you're going to be an adult anyway. So I'm not saying bring people to my house and start doing silly stuff in my house, but deep down, I'm not going to waste energy to get upset at what you do. It's your life, right?
We have one. We only have. Well, Charles will tell you that it's my fault, but whatever. I'm trying to be honest here. I like to speak to Ben at least once a week, at least. But that's what I would like. He will call at least 3 times a week because he wants to. That's his choice. I don't say, I want to hear from you a minimum of once a week. He just chooses to call us just to let us know what's going on, or, he's going out, or he's doing this, or whatever's going on in his life. I've got a friend whose child went to university at the same time Ben did, and the only reason he calls them on a Sunday is if he doesn't call on a Sunday, they don't give him his weekly allowance. Now, if I have to bribe my child to phone me, I believe you've done something wrong. And so for me, it's really important that you build that relationship of trust. You build that relationship that you care about each other, you respect each other, and you look out for each other. And I think that it's not just about family, it's friends, it's the wider. I care so deeply about everybody. And I mean that with all my heart. I really do care deeply about everybody. And Ben has taken that from me.
Yeah.
And Charles once said, when we were a long time ago, before he was even out of my tummy, the conversation was at one of these classes you go to, and they said, what traits would you like your child to take from each other? And I said, I'd like my child to be as funny and witty, as sarcastic as my husband, as smart as both of us. And I think I said I wanted him to be, I think I some like strong was one of the words I used. It's written down somewhere. Charles wrote these things down. He said, I'd like my child to be just like his mother. I'd like him to look like his mother. I'd like him to act like his mother. I'd like him to have the heart of his mother. I'd like him to just be like his mum, but not as generous.
Yeah, that's a boundary for the next boundary.
That was 22 years ago. And as I've told people before now, Ben's the one that signed up for the Guide Dogs of the Blind and UNICEF and NSPCC and you name it, he's signed up for it. He did take everything from me, bless him, and he took everything from his dad. He's an absolute mix of both of us. The key of this story is, what is important is that he chooses us. He chooses to phone us. He chooses to tell us. He chooses to ask us. That's all you want from your kids. That's all you want. Communication and relationship. And as they get older, the controls disappear.
Yes.
But when they're younger, we have to have that level of management. And I'm sorry to use that word, but it is really about management, managing the situation, managing the relationship, managing the child.
Yeah.
And on that note, Annie, I know we have to go.
I think that teaching the boundary, being think, and do the right thing. So that's what it comes down to, really. That will set the scene for many a rule that doesn't have to be said, because the kid knows it. I'm lucky, you're lucky. Ben is such a great person. He's considerate. He's got a heart of gold. And he thinks before he does these things. He might speak, as he thinks, but at least he thinks. He hasn't got malice in him. And you want a kid who doesn't have malice, who doesn't want to be reckless, who doesn't want to destroy themselves and destroy others. Michael, I missed you earlier, my friend. Michael says, give them more latitude to become who they aspire to be. But that's after a certain age, I think. You say that's after.
They're sort of getting more towards late teens. You can do that, and you can give them the opportunities as young as you like. But understand, if you spoil your child rotten and you give them everything, all I will say is look at the Beckhams, and I'll leave it there. You can ruin somebody by giving them everything, and their expectation levels are so give me, and then all of a sudden it's like you stop giving. I get it came out yesterday, and I don't gossip, but I thought it was brilliant. Apparently Nicola Peltz Beckham gets £1 million a month to live. That's what she has to live on from her dad, 1 million. And so which is more than so 12 million a year is more than Beckham's worth, son Beckham. So David and Victoria were asked to give Brooklyn $1 million a month to match, so that they were equal footing. And they went, nah.
Like we're doing now.
We worked for our money, and he
Yes.
should do the same, right? He needs to learn that ethic and moral and all the other things that come with it. We've given him every opportunity. He needs to get out there and do it for himself. And they and obviously the billionaire went, what are you talking about? You know, if you've got it, give it to your kids. And it's like, no, that's not what we do. So anyway, listen, Patricia finishes off with sometimes even when it seems bad.
Patricia, one more. I like Patricia's point.
Right. That is a good one.
It's something that we choose to respond, or we choose to react. Right? Like, it's just, and like you said earlier, Paul, we can easily be the, I'll deal with it. We must be, rather than, I'm so upset you destroyed everything. Let's look at things in proportion. I think that's what I take what Patricia's saying.
Mediate. Always mediate. Always think about it from every angle before you go making crazy, mad decisions. Because sometimes you react, and by reacting, you actually then create another action, and so it keeps going round. You have to just stop for a minute, breathe, think about what you're going to do. And like I said, I've always said it, we'll deal with it in the morning. And that means they go to bed wondering what on earth is going to be that they're going to have to do.
The anticipation might even kill them, right?
Well, not quite, but it will certainly make them a little bit worried, yeah.
So, Alavine, welcome.
Hello, thank you for coming. Curtis, great to see you.
Thanks for joining us. I want to end on Coach Ashley's point, which I think is interesting. I guess speaking to the power, the need for boundaries.
Yes.
Imagine roads being without lines, lights, signs, or rules. Go on. What's your take? What's your response to that?
Okay, so I love that analogy, as in we need to have things in place so that we all can work together. The big issue, as always, with this kind of comment is people get, it's rigid. But actually, that is a roads where you've got a vehicle that can kill people. We need that rigidity. Absolutely. In life, that is very difficult. It's very difficult to implement. But I absolutely understand why we need it on roads, because obviously they're killing machines. If you take that analogy into life, it can be very, very difficult, because you start making those rigid demands, you end up getting backlash and problems, is my view.
Let's say, Chanda, welcome. So I'll give you a couple of minutes. And I say we were just about to go on our way, but I'm glad you're here. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Right? I'll say two things about Coach Ashley's point. Right? So I remember stressing out over my son's GCSE exams that happened last year, right? Last summer. Of course, all through time, you have to revise, you have to work. Same as I'm doing now with A-levels, right? You have to work, put the work in. And day after day, I'm thinking you're not working. You're just not working hard enough. You're playing your game too much. And I thought, the boundaries were what's going to do it. Coach Ashley and everyone else, I was amazed when he got all A's. Without the lines, without the constraints, without dad in his ear. Thankfully, I didn't do myself in while I was annoyed that he wasn't doing the work, right? So that's number one. The second one is this: Paulette, you live in the countryside, right? You live I know where you live. I live in the countryside too. And let me tell you, nothing creates bottlenecks more than traffic lights, the constraints on our roads. Leave us alone. The roads work perfectly well. They flow. People don't get
roundabouts, Dave.
Sometimes. No, I'm saying that. Now think about it. Now think about Paul. Like, in your place, there's country lanes, right? I'm saying, yes, it does get tight and dicey in places, but there's no long traffic like they have in London. There's traffic lights. There's rules. There's fines for everything. So I think there is some place I can say, just like give the kids a bit more leeway. Like, control everything is not the answer. Same as let
But
it all.
going back to your son, you can get great like grade 7s, which are A's. You can get 8s that are A's. You can get 9s that are A's. So Ben got 10, 9 A stars. So he was in the top 5% of the country. Does that make him the best? No, it just means that he's gifted when it comes to doing exams, and that's great. Does that make him better than anyone else? No. He's a high functioning autistic kid that struggles with communication, relationship building, and so many other things. So he might win on one and lose on something else. What we said at the time was he might be able to sail through his GCSEs, but you can't do that with your A levels. That is a different kettle of fish. There's so much work involved, and you just can't not do the work. And that's something that you and I have spoken about, and you've obviously spoken to Kobe about it, to make sure that they understand. I think we all just have to be, we have to be flexible. That's what I think we have to be. Stop the rigid thinking, stop the rigid, draconianism of parenting, and try and work a way where you both mediate, both parents if they're together, or one parent if you're on your own, but you have to mediate with your child to come to a conclusion where you both understand why the rule is set. On that note, let's go to the lovely tender.
I would say let's bring this topic back, please. Just for that topic at that bit alone, Paulette. I think there's something about how the parents, how the people involved understand, and also maybe to manage their boundaries. I got my boundaries. My wife has her boundaries. And I'm saying, how do those two come together? Because there's a way to do it right. There's a way to do it wrong. There just is, right? There's a way to confuse the kids more, a way to damage our kids more, by being.
Especially if a child can play one against the other.
Exactly.
Dad said it was okay. Dad gave me the money. It's.
Let's talk about that next time, if that's all right.
Yeah, definitely.
Miss Chanda, how are you doing? Thank you for joining us.
Yes, and I'm sorry I was late to the game here, but I just wanted to pop in. I have yet to be asleep, by the way. My sleep schedule is so off, so it's just crazy. Just to, I know Annie just had said that we would discuss this at a later time, but just to kind of give a little bit of insight as to how not just parents, but grandparents can play a role in how things happen with children. Being a single mom, I had my mother tell me there was nothing wrong with my oldest son. And I had suspected for the longest time that there was something wrong because, the teacher would send things home and, well, I don't know that Zach is paying attention in class, or maybe he has hearing problems, or, this, that, the other thing. And I kept saying, I really believe that he should be tested for autism. And my mother, believing that her grandson was just perfect, that there could not be a thing wrong with him, just did not want to believe me, did not want me to have him tested at all for anything of the sort. And in fact, for the longest time, she didn't even want me to have his eyes tested. Come to find out, he needed glasses instead of just moving him to the front of the room. And it wasn't just his hearing, that he needed glasses. Well, so there are things that, yeah, sometimes it's not just the parents that need to kind of.
I can tell
look.
you now, Chanda, we've spoken about this offline, I know, but we have very similar situations where we still have issues with the grandparents. I have a 55-year-old sister-in-law who is clearly autistic and has never been diagnosed because they would never do it. And it's the most ridiculous situation because she could get benefits and help and support.
Yeah.
Instead of that, Charles and I help out, and the parents help out. So isn't that covering it up, really? But Ben I made a point of every conversation, and the granddad would get up and walk away. He wouldn't listen. He didn't want to hear it. It couldn't be possible that their perfect grandson, their only grandchild, could be in any way, shape, or form not right or damaged or broken.
Right.
And and I think that is very, very important, that they put me under immense pressure to not do what I did. But thank God I did do what I did, because it kept Ben alive. And now they understand. And now they know that I'm trained and I'm qualified, and they ask me about the sister, and I say 100%, and then they go, she doesn't want to talk about it. And I'm like, well, okay.
Yeah, she doesn't want to talk about it.
Now we've convinced them she doesn't talk about it. So
yeah, but
you can't win.
No, of course not. But I wanted to touch on that a little bit. It's very interesting that there are other family members that inject themselves into our children's lives. But
oh yes, that adds to the boundaries. So we'll definitely discuss that at the next one.
Yes,
sure.
But I wanted to mention that your books would have been so very helpful to both of my boys in not only helping with their anxieties, because even though Zach has autism and there is a lot of anxiety that comes along with autism, but my youngest, because of situational things that had taken place, he suffered from some anxiety. And I still see it in him, not pronounced like it was through elementary school and middle school, and it dwindled through high school, and now that he's grown, he's so much better. But he has actually done so well. And I think that the boundaries that I had set for my boys, having been a single mom and knowing that my ex-husband, having been 6'5", a whole foot taller than me, if I had not set boundaries for my boys, no matter what had taken place with them, whether autistic or, whatever else, come what may, that I didn't want them running roughshod over me. And so I knew that I would have to set boundaries. because there would be a day and time that they would be larger than me, and I was not going to be able to turn them over my knee and give them a spanking. I am not for gentle parenting. I think I spanked Zachary maybe 3 times, and I spanked Tristan maybe once. Sorry for any parents in the audience that are not for spankings, but
It was a long time ago.
it was. But I think that those were the boundaries that I needed to set for myself
Mm.
and for my boys. Obviously everyone's circumstances are different, but both my boys are a lot taller than me, a lot bigger than me, at 5'5" and 140 pounds. I am no match for them. And so if I had told them no on something and they decided to, you know, really,
Get physical, yeah.
yeah, and it happens.
Yeah.
There are families that do suffer domestic violence with their children.
Absolutely.
And so, boundaries are something that definitely need to be set with children. For various reasons. And I think that that was one thing that I had taken into consideration, especially having been a single parent. But I think that your books just speak volumes in so many different areas, and the anxieties and everything else that go hand in hand with everything. I want to say thank you so much for everything that you've done for children's books out there, and I wish that I would have had them when my boys were little. So
Thank you for saying that. That's
to any
beautiful.
parents out there, I definitely will push your books 110%. So
Bless your heart. Well, listen, we'll speak soon.
love
Yeah?
you.
Take care. Look after you. I don't know if Annie is still with us or whether Annie has
I'm
left.
still with you. What am I
Oh,
going to
yes,
be?
he.
What am I
If
going
you
to
were in
be?
2 rooms. I
You
thought you might have been
start looking at
splitting yourself.
myself. No, there's no other event on now. If there is, then I'm not there. Chanda, thank you so much. You have, thank you for bringing the issues. Like saying, we're going to add that to conversation for our next event.
I think we should do another room on this because
Yeah.
there is so much to cover.
Indeed.
Definitely.
For sure. No, thank you so much. So I'm so glad you came up.
Definitely.
I'm tempted to say, U2's diet is doing you good, but I didn't really say that. Eat more, my friends. Eat more. You need to eat more. Both of you need to eat more. But anyway, as long as you two are healthy and happy, that's important, right? So I think Patricia reminds us, Miss You Graham is, I guess, for brief recovery. I don't know if that's your service, Patricia. I think it is. My memory is, as I get older, my memory fades a bit, right?
I'm going to look that up.
Yeah, looking, I connect with her. I connect with her and find out what Miss.
Well, we have the mental wellness cafe, so that would be a good thing to understand. So I'll look it up.
Maybe we're gonna come and speak. Come and speak, Patricia. Come and
Yeah,
share.
I'd love you to, Patricia. Please do.
Anything I can help people to have less pain in their lives is a good thing, right? So I love Patricia comments. It does say, a wonderfully candid and inspirational event. Yay! That's you,
That's
Paulette.
all we can ever ask.
Exactly. But thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, everyone who joined us. And again, Chanda, thank you for reminding me to play the Jack and Water video.
Yeah.
So last night I was going to play a video, Stanley Green's sponsored video. I said I'm going to play it. I said what it was, and I forgot. So totally forgot. And I pressed end. It's like, damn. And I had to do a post about it. But I'm going to play your video now, Paulette. that's probably going to play us out, my friends.
All right, lovely. Thank you very much.
We do join us again in a couple of weeks, but on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
And they say we'll of course create.
We'll come back to it for sure.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Paulette. Get back to your recovery. That's what I'll say. Right, water video.
I trying.
Back in the water video. I don't know which song. Okay, hopefully this is a new song as well. But enjoy, my friends. Thank you so much. Enjoy your day. Enjoy your week. What's left of it. It's tax return day for me. I have to take a shot. Bye.
Don't mind.
Bye. Last minute for that. It's a bill, isn't it? So I'm not in a hurry to get on with it. I'll get it done tonight, though. I must.
My husband's an accountant, remember?
Yeah, my accountant's going crazy. I'm like, calm down, man. Calm down. Anyway, we'll see you in a couple of weeks, my friends. Take care, chat. Take care as well. Bye.
All right, take care.
Walter, #1 bestseller worldwide. Stories that inspire, becoming every child's guide. She teaches resilience, skill by skill, slowing worries down until they're still. Approaching issues with a stronger mind, building generations one heart at a time. When the storm clouds gather and you don't know what to do, take a deep breath, clear your mind, let the answer come to you. Walter's gonna be there in your present and your future too. So just stop and ask yourself, what would Walter do? What would Walter do? What would Walter do? What would Walter do? Not for profit, but for every child's right to handle smaller challenges, to stand and fight. The bigger stuff takes longer, that's okay, but confidence begins with what we do today. Trustworthy souls and integrity shine at Mental Wellness Cafe. She draws the line between drowning in the darkness and finding light. She lifts them up, teaches them to hold on tight. When the storm clouds gather and you don't know what to do, take a deep breath, clear your mind, let the answer come to you. Walter's gonna be there in your present and your future too. So just stop and ask yourself, what would Walter do? What would Walter do? To clear your mind, give yourself headspace to think before you let the pressure make your spirit sink. Self-belief and talking to someone you trust, these are the tools that lift us from the dust. She champions the dignity of growing strong. Every child capable, they belong all along. Generations rising with the strength she's built. Paulette's legacy, a world without guilt. From Huntington to hearts across the globe, her compassion is the thread that she has woven and sewed. Adults and children, all walks of life, she's extending her hand through every kind of strife. Understanding, patience with the counselor's soul, making broken spirits feel completely whole. With Charlotte beside her, they both believe that every mind can learn, every heart can achieve. When you storm clouds gather and you don't know what to do, take a deep breath, clear your mind, let the answer come to you. Walter's gonna be there in your present, your future too. So stop and ask yourself, what would Walter do?
And so it be done.
Yes, and I was doing something, so I've just done it. So, which is share the link to buy the books, my friends.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So
Love
bye.
it. Well, that was very sweet of Chanda, wasn't it?